Okay.
I want to welcome everyone to this morning's committee hearing. I am joined by Councilmember Jan Perry and Councilmember Tony Cardenas. We have a quorum, so we can get started. I want to see, are any of these just for public comment, or are they all for specific items? I think they are. So with that said, what we will do is we will deal with the consent calendar, and then we'll come back and have a discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just to understand the order of the committee. So we're going to hear the consent calendar first, and then we're going to go through the items that are called.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hear general public comment afterwards.
We have no general public comment. We do have comment on two items, items 3 and item 7 at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, Ms. Barclay, item 1.
Meg Barkley with the CLA. Item 1 is a report from the Community Redevelopment Agency and the Chief Legislative Analyst and a resolution relative to sidewalk repairs and related public improvements in the Beacon Street redevelopment project area.
Okay, without objection, we'll adopt the CLA report. That brings us to item 2.
Item 2 is a report from the CRA and the City Administrative Officer and a resolution relative to executing a loan agreement for the construction of a 98-unit affordable housing project in the Earthquake Disaster Assistance Project for portions of Council District 3.
Okay, on that item, we will adopt the CAO report. Let's skip item 3 at this point, and let's go to item 4.
Item 4 is a report from the CRA and the CAO relative to executing a loan agreement with 5555 Hollywood LP for the development of affordable senior housing in the Hollywood redevelopment project area.
Okay, we'll adopt the CAO report on item 4.
I have questions on that.
Okay. We will hold item 5. Mr. Cardenas has some questions. We've just been joined, both of you at the same time. We've just been joined by Councilman Reyes and Garcetti. Item 6.
Item 6 is a report from the CRA and the CLA and a resolution relative to public improvements to alleys located in EDA 3 project area.
Okay, on item 6, we'll adopt the CLA report. We will hold item 7. That brings us to item 8.
Item 8 is a report from the CDD and the CAO and a resolution relative to a second supplemental trust agreement amending certain provisions with respect to city fixed-rate certificates of participation issued for the benefit of the Sierra Canyon High School Foundation project.
Okay, then on that item, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 9.
Item 9 is a motion, Reyes-Perry, relative to the installation of additional security cameras and the maintenance of all security cameras in the Westlake Recovery Redevelopment Project area.
Okay, and item 9, we'll adopt that motion.
Is there an amendment to that item?
I have no...
Report back in 30 days.
Yeah, our recommendation, excuse me, thank you. Our recommendation would be that the motion be amended to instruct the agency to report back in 30 days with a review of the project area budget and a source of funds to address the request in the motion.
Okay.
As amended.
As amended. Item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Wesson, Rosendahl, Garcetti, relative to requiring all residential rehabilitation projects that receive $25,000 or more from the city to meet LEED for Homes Silver or higher standards.
A discussion on that.
You do?
Yeah.
Item 10, we'll hold item 10. So, without objections, the items that we did not hold will be deemed approved. I have a speaker card on item 3. Linda Valverde, is it? Please come forward. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Short. Good morning. My name is Linda Valverde. I'm with the Los Angeles Community Action Network. And while we generally support this project, it is imperative that the relocation and replacement housing plans be approved first, before the money. The public has to be able to review them and comment, especially tenants, because there are about 150 tenants whose future depends on these plans. Once the plans are approved, of course, this will be a good project worth funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barclay, could you read that?
Oh, yes, sir. Item 3 is a report from the CRA and the CLA relative to executing an amended and restated loan agreement with Ford Apartments LP to allow for the conversion of an existing CRA loan to a permanent loan for affordable permanent supportive housing at the Ford Hotel.
Seeing that there are no questions with the members of the committee, then on item 3, we will adopt the CLA report on that item. That now brings us to item 7. Right, or no, I'm sorry, it's item 5. Yeah, could we please,
Yes, sir.
item 5?
Yes, sir. Item 5 is reports from the CRA and the CLA relative to awarding contracts to 45 firms to provide general architectural consulting services for various projects and programs on an as-needed basis for a term of 3 years with 2 one-year options and a total amount not to exceed $2.5 million.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Who's going to start? Felipe, I want you to start. I want to ask about your dog.
Oh, my dog.
Because you've had the dog, what, it'd be 2 weeks Friday or 3 weeks?
That's right.
And what was her name again?
Lacey. She's doing great.
Good. And she's getting along well with the other dog? Or
Well-
has that been,
They're getting along. Yeah, little by little.
they'll get there. Okay, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. The agency is requesting authority to award contracts to 45 firms to provide various categories of general architectural consulting services for various agency projects on an as-needed basis, and they're requesting a total of $2.5 million. The agency is here to provide more information if you...
Good morning. My name is,
It's on.
it's on. My name is Blanca Huerta, and I am the responsible party for preparing this RFQ. And
Okay.
I'm able to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Mr. Cardenas, you had
Yeah, I
some
have some
questions.
questions. Now, these are awarding contracts to 45 firms to provide general architectural consulting services. So this will be services rendering to many of the project areas, or when all is said and done, all the project areas in the city?
Yes, this is an agency-wide list where staff can obtain bids from various architectural firms to award contracts for the 3-year period. This also could be extended for an additional 2 on an as-needed basis, as long as the authorization amount of 2.5 or, within that amount is still available.
Okay. Now, that gets to the point of availability. What happens if they're going to do some render services in a project area where funds are unavailable? Where would we get the funds to compensate them?
Well, the board memo identifies anticipated projects, and these projects that have been listed as part of the attachment, staff is aware of the need, and I'm certain that funds have been identified. These come from various funding sources within the respective project areas, as well as TI and CDBG.
Okay. So you're confident that they'll get paid?
Oh, definitely.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
But what's important to me as a policymaker is to what the source of funds are, and whether or not funds will be used from one project area to go into a general pot and then be used in another area.
I'm not 100% sure how the budget works. I believe we have staff here from our budget department that can answer that question, but I believe that sources within a project area cannot be allocated for a different project area. Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Hi, Elsie Lai, Budget Manager of the CRA. How this works is, once they've actually identified the project and the services, they have to identify the funding before they move forward with the specific contract with the vendor.
Okay.
So this is a blanket contract. When the project area actually has a service, they will identify the funds before they move forward. And, given the current circumstances, I mean, this blanket contract may last us a couple of years, because I don't know how much activity we'll have depending on, the project area.
Okay. Well, what I'd like, Mr. Chairman, is for the CRA staff to report to this committee, whether it be in 30 days or 60 days, whatever time they feel they need in order to accurately report to this committee as to what mechanisms you anticipate using should you have the need for these kinds of services in a project area where the funds are not directly available, and what mechanisms the CRA would use and the sources they would retrieve funds from in order to satisfy that need.
Okay.
Okay.
What works for you? 30 days, 60 days, or do you have a preference, Mr. Cardenas?
No, it doesn't seem like there's a rush, but,
30 days is fine.
Okay.
great.
Then, on that, we'll adopt that, what is that, the CLA report as amended.
That's amended. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 7. Why don't we read the item, and then we have some public speakers that I'll call up.
Item 7 is a report from the Community Development Department and the CAO relative to a $30 million loan agreement with Theater Dreams LA, CHILP, to provide funding assistance for the capital improvement of the Kodak Theater and related actions.
Okay. We'd like to call up, I think it's LaRon Gubler, Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Gubler?
Yep. Where's the goob?
Jim Berger, IATSE.
There they all go.
Mike McDonald,
They're copying the Academy Awards in the
LA.
bathroom while their name's being called.
here, please come forward.
Perfect.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, council members. I'm Mike McDowell. I'm the Senior Director of Cultural Tourism for LA Inc., the Los Angeles Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I'm here to express our support for the proposal before you. As you know, of course, tourism is now LA's largest industry, generating nearly $14 billion in visitor spending in the local economy and supporting some 250,000 full-time permanent jobs. A major reason people come to Los Angeles time and again is the quality and variety of our arts and entertainment offerings. In fact, a study of cultural tourism in 7 major U.S. urban destinations, Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, San Diego, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C., revealed that L.A. actually ranks #1 in the percentage of visitors who attend musical theater and among the top cities for live drama, with more than 3 million of our visitors attending live performances in L.A. each year. Live theater and performances are particularly important in attracting repeat visitation from our largest source of visitors, the geographic triangle bordered by San Francisco, San Diego, and Phoenix. Fully half of our 26 million visitors come from this area. They know LA and they've seen all the traditional first-time visitor sites. One of the reasons they come time and again is for the live performances and special events presented in LA this year. So we at LA Inc. fully support the proposal to retrofit the Kodak Theater, and we strongly believe this project will be a robust attraction for the city, providing ongoing stimulus to the economy, revenue to the city, and much-needed new jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jim Berger. I'm the acting business agent for the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 33. We are the theatrical stage technicians here in Los Angeles. The Kodak Theater is one of the theaters in which we have a contract, and I am joined today with representatives of the Treasurers and Ticket Sellers Union 857. I've come here to offer our union's support for the Theater Dreams and the Cirque du Soleil project. They've been good friends and employers to our union since they took over the Hollywood and Highland facility in 2004. This is a first viable opportunity for the theater to house a permanent resident theatrical company and the first long-term project that is committed to the theater in its 9 years of existence. It will bring 2,000 plus people to the Hollywood and Highland facility 8 times a week, 48 weeks a year, which will, of course, bolster the struggling shops and restaurants in the complex as well as the surrounding Hollywood area. Most important to our unions is that it will offer 70 to 90 permanent middle-class jobs and hundreds of part-time jobs throughout each year. The Cirque du Soleil company itself has a long-proven track record of promoting successful blockbuster and innovative productions, and this Hollywood-themed production will offer our city an especially unique, high-quality production that is enriching cultural experience not available anywhere else. And We thank you for your time, and again, we urge each of you to vote in favor of the CIM request.
Thank you for coming. Did the other union people want to just, for the record, mention their names? We want everybody to hear you in this building.
Miranda Garza-Tong with representing Local 857 Treasurers and Ticket Sellers.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come here. Mr. President, do you see Mr. Laron?
I don't see Mr. Gubler here. Nope.
Okay, guys, thank you.
On his way.
Thank you very much. Can we have the representatives from the department come forward? Ninos, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Linus Benjamin, representing Community Development Department.
Okay, Mr. Garcetti, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. This is a very exciting day, and there's been a lot of hard work that has gone into this. Let me just start by kind of dispelling a couple things, because it seems to be the message of the day. This comes from a fund that is about $357 million of Section 108 lending capacity that we have in the city of Los Angeles, of which about $67.2 million remains. This has been used throughout the city for a number of projects, and I'll maybe ask you to detail some of the other places outside of Hollywood, so people don't think that suddenly Hollywood has made a run on the city's money, even though this has intense citywide importance. As we all know, the city owns the Kodak Theater. We helped build the project, and it has gone through two owners, the latest of which is CIM Group. It's a great theater for television, and it was built for the Academy Awards and brought the Academy Awards back to Hollywood, which was a critical piece in the comeback of the neighborhood, which I think is very universally accepted now. That said, it's a very vertical theater, and it's been a tough place for Hollywood shows to come to, but it has been a place which one company, which is arguably the top theater and entertainment company in the world, Cirque du Soleil. I can't remember if it's 6 of the top 6 or 7 of the top 7 shows in Las Vegas are all Cirque du Soleil shows, and even when you look at the shows that have been there the longest that they've tried to get rid of, the audience keeps coming even to the very oldest Cirque shows in Las Vegas, and they have, close to 80% capacity every single night, when the next biggest shows in Vegas are about 60% capacity. So it's really an amazing destination theater company. That said, I know that Shao Kuba, who's here, and others from CIM, some Hollywood boosters had the idea of bringing them to the theater because they were familiar with the theater from the Academy Awards in 2005, I think. They came and performed during the Academy Awards. And it's actually well built for Cirque du Soleil, which requires a much more vertical theater and generally has theaters custom built for them. And they very politely turned us all down many, many times until they finally came to Hollywood. We're so inspired by the turnaround and the theater that they offered to make a new show based on the history of Hollywood. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about cultural tourism, people have for so many years come to Hollywood and said, wait, that's all there is? I mean, the Walk of Fame's nice, but there's nothing there. There's no there. Increasingly, we have that changing. We just opened Madame Tussauds last week, which is a $55 million investment. We have great restaurants and shops and nightclubs. And this is really going to be, I think, the outside of the Academy Awards, of course, the landmark show that exists in Hollywood, and so we've been very excited. That said, Cirque du Soleil can pick and choose where it wants to go. Just for everyone's kind of background information, the last show they said yes to, and they turned down dozens of requests a year, was in Dubai, and the only way they said yes to that is when the Dubai government promised 10 years of tickets sold out, which you can, I guess, do in Dubai. That said, or you maybe used to be able to do in Dubai. Here in LA, it was an amazing coup that we got them. And the reason we got them, I think, is twofold. One, Cirque du Soleil was saved by LA way back when they got a small loan from the Canadian government and set up a tent down by the pier in Santa Monica, and instead of folding, became a worldwide phenomenon. And so they have a lot of respect and love for LA. Second is the work of a lot of individuals, government, CIM, which has wanted to do something with the theater, But we also know that a Cirque show is a very expensive build-out, because part of what's incredible about them is they will often take a stage and literally rebuild it, which is what's been going on at the Kodak, putting hydraulics, stages that tilt. They have shows that are filled with water, the entire stage, et cetera. So in doing that, we know we suddenly came up to economic bad times in which banks are not exactly saying, please let us give you loans on things, which is where the city can come in. This is exactly a perfect use of this money to be able to bring in, by the calculations that we're given, that's about 1.2 million people a year that will see this show. Let me say that again, 1.2 million people a year. That's like more than 1 out of every 4 Angelenos seeing this show. And trust me, many people will not be Angelenos. If 1% of those were visitors from outside of LA, that's 12,000 additional visitors. If it's 10,000, if it's 10%, then we're looking at 120,000 visitors that otherwise wouldn't come to Los Angeles, spend money, stay in our hotels, et cetera. So beyond the jobs that are created directly, the economic effects, I think, are very strong. That said, that's just background. Let me ask you a couple questions. How do you calculate, why don't you tell us about where the Section 108 loan capacity has been used in other parts of the city? And then secondly, how we calculate the jobs that are being created, both construction jobs and then kind of permanent jobs, our IATSE jobs that are going to be, because this is a union, thankfully a union theater, but also how Cirque, if you know as well, does their job training. Because I know in Canada, they're very well known throughout the world in going into some of the most oppressed areas, and part of their vision is to train people to become performers and stagehands and others who come from some of the most disenfranchised backgrounds. But why don't you walk us through a little bit of that?
Definitely. First, as far as Section 108 loan, a couple years ago, there was very little demand for this borrowing. And most of our loans were made in CRA project areas.
And why was that? Why was there low demand?
Because there was tremendous amount of liquidity in the capital markets. There was, borrowers did not want to come borrow from governmental agencies. There are too many strings attached to this. There are so many regulations that these loans have to meet. Still they have to meet. But today it's possible, since banks are not lending, borrowers like CIM are coming to the city. A couple of years ago, most possibly, there would have been long list of banks competing to make this loan.
So is it fair to say this is more heavily regulated and scrutinized than a bank loan in terms of the regulations?
There are two criteria involved. There are regulatory constraints and underwriting constraints. Banks, usually they have zero regulatory constraints compared to this funds, this source of funds.
Okay.
So constraints are very strict. And many projects, of course, do not qualify. We are introduced by council offices, mayor's office to a lot of transactions which do not qualify. We try very hard to make them work, but we tell them that do not qualify. So in the past, mostly loans have been made in CRA project areas. We have helped a shopping center by name of Chesterfield Square. We are very proud of it. It's very successful. We have helped an office building in Council District 4 for J. Schneider, which will generate a lot of jobs as a result of our financial assistance. That was also, bank was basically reneging on their loan, and we stepped in to help the process. Going forward, this money is for economic development purposes. Unfortunately, it is not for rescue measures. There are many loans.
That's an important point. This is not economic recovery money in the stimulus package. This predates that and has a different intention, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, the intention is the same in that it's supposed to create economic development and jobs, but it is not giveaway money that the city has that's cash that never has to be repaid. This is loan authority from the federal government that pre-existed and is going to projects that meet the high standards of scrutinization.
That's correct. And to give you a more specific example, if this source of fund cannot be used for purpose of refinancing. If there's a borrower has problem with their banks, and the loan is not being renewed, we cannot use this money to refinance existing loan, unfortunately. But that is how the regulations are. We have to live with them. During last 2 years, the need for this money has increased, And we have increased the number of our applications, transmittals, I mean, to make this money. We have got a lot of money out for a lot of projects. Mostly, however, has been still within CRA project areas, mostly South Los Angeles. We have selective projects that we were able to qualify elsewhere. I do not recall of any particular one in Hollywood at the moment. This particular loan, the primary reason, you mentioned our incentives, all the regulatory reasons that why we are stepping in. Basically, City of Los Angeles is tourism is a major industry for the city. And preservation of that source of income for the city and maintaining the jobs and creation of jobs is cardinal importance.
How do you calculate the jobs?
First, it's a second test. First of all, we lend money as much as the project needs. We cannot lend money more than it doesn't need. That's number one test. Number two test would be the project has to create at minimum for each $35,000 money lent to them, financial assistance they are getting, they have created one full-time equivalent job. In this case, it's 858 jobs, but based on other estimates that we have from the borrower, from CIM and from CERC, the number of jobs to be created is more than that, significantly more than that.
And let me just say one thing on that, too. I don't know how you calculated this, but for folks who know the theater, and certainly IATSE folks and others know this, every night that theater is dark, while there might be somebody who you can say worked sometime that year and has a job, that's different than people working every single night at that theater. And so, you know, when we calculate that, too, it's not just creating new jobs, it's also maintaining steady work for the jobs that exist. And that's been one of the problems with the theater, quite frankly, is, you know, I think for a lot of our stagehands and stage professionals is, you know, they're on for a few weeks and then they're off for a month and then they're on for a couple days and they're off, and that's very difficult to support a family on.
And as far as accessing, low-income people accessing these jobs, CIM has agreed, CERC also has reviewed our funding terms and conditions, that they will use City of Los Angeles work source centers, first making the jobs available to low-income people. And if there's any job training requirement, they will work with city's work source centers in collaboration with each other to make sure that low-income people have total access for jobs.
And as one supplement to that, too, Cirque du Soleil has been working, before they decided to even come, they've been working for a number of years with homeless youth in Hollywood. And have talked about some of those, they've been teaching them circus skills, which has been a phenomenal thing to see and to give homeless youth who really have much, you know, very little else in their life, some confidence and some strength. And I could see many of them becoming parts of these shows or part of the company as well.
And social responsibility is the paragraph section of their agreement with CIM also. So they're committed several places to continue with their social responsibility. And we have operational mechanism in place through work source centers to monitor their compliance with this requirement.
And walk us through the terms of the loan and why you believe the financial underpinnings of this are secure enough for the city to authorize this.
As far as underwriting, first, Cirque du Soleil itself is investing more than $50 million for this project. CIM is putting an additional $20 million equity of their own. So
two-thirds of this is Cirque and one-third is CIM, roughly?
Close to half and half, a little bit. But CIM is wanted to borrow 30% of this total cost, and they were not able to get that. So that's the need. As far as debt coverage ratio, under very conservative, we have done a lot of different scenarios, different assumptions to see whether, under what worst case scenarios, whether they can meet the debt service of this loan. You refer to Cirque du Soleil's events in Vegas. Their average occupancy is 85%.
85.
And in this case, close to 65% is break even. So we are very comfortable that they will meet their debt service. And also, this is a secured loan. It's not unsecured.
Right.
And this loan will be secured by total Hollywood Highland complex, which is a combination of hotel, retail, cinemas.
So worst case scenario, they default on the loan and we own more of that center.
That's correct, because it's close to 50% loan to value
Okay.
on the whole thing. And we have, yes.
Right.
So in terms of loan to value, we are covered. Debt service coverage ratio, we are more than comfortable. So underwriting wise, this project, its financing is
Okay.
safe.
Well, hopefully I've made the case. I mean, this is, there's a lot of misconceived comments that were out there. You know, for me, there's a lot of development projects that are going on. There's a lot of downturn right now. It's a difficult moment for any liquidity. This is precisely when the city can step in and create something good, which will, for a decade, I think, and beyond, be an incredible magnet for visitors to Hollywood and create local jobs.
If I may,
Yeah,
I would like to comment on that. This loan has no impact on general fund. This is not a city's money. We are a conduit between federal government, borrowing from federal government under our line of credit.
And they have to ultimately approve this, right?
Absolutely. Every loan, they have to approve it. So we are conduit we are taking money, federal government, which is designated for these purposes, and we are directing them to project specific. It is not CRA money, it's not that, or cities, other pockets of money. This has no impact on the city's budget, other resources of the city that I've heard some comments about that today.
Well, I think, Mr. President, I know Mr. Cardenas has something to say, but what Ninos just said, I think is very important to make sure that people understand. This is not money that's coming out of the general fund. This is not money that's coming out of our redevelopment agency, that in a lot of ways, they're kind of like the middle, as to use your term, the conduit that facilitates this, with the federal government and the entities that are trying to develop projects in the district. And I agree, a lot of times people don't exactly understand what's going on, and that's why, things kind of get twisted. Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah, I have a question about underwriting. Is there anything that allows the city with these Section 108 loans to discriminate against a facility or a project based on the fact that it's already very pretty and it's high profile?
No.
No, speak up.
No.
I'm being serious.
No, there's no.
And the reason why I say that is because there were cameras in here earlier, and my understanding they were here on this item. And the reason why they're here on this item is because apparently some people are upset because the city of Los Angeles is somehow involved with this Section 108 loan to loan $30 million to a very pretty place, a place that is very high profile. So once again, the fact that a project or a facility is very attractive and it's might even be recognized around the world as a very nice place, such as a place where they have Academy Awards, where those shows are watched around the world. Do you have the right to discriminate against that project based on the fact that it's high profile and it's so pretty and everybody knows about it?
No, there's no restriction, and in fact, we cannot discriminate based on those factors.
Okay. So Section 108 loans are not designated for buildings or facilities that are only facilities and buildings that are very blighted and abandoned looking.
That's correct, that's not. In fact, we have written a report which is it passed through this committee. We have made recommendation that going forward, because there are three criteria for making 108 loans. One of them is slum and blight. We have made
slum and blight, you said?
removal of alleviation of slum and blight condition on a property. We have made a recommendation, considering the high rate of unemployment throughout the city, our target to be creation and retention of jobs. That's another category. And not to focus so much on removal of slum and blight, which was our objective with the previous loans that we were engaged in. Our target is right now, target and directives is to target transactions which create, retain jobs.
That was 2 out of 3?
The other one is the provision of goods and services to low-income communities. That is still there on a selective basis because retail industry is right now so bad.
Are there any low-income people living in and around the Kodak Theater? Or is it all just rich people and people like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, people who show up to the Academy Awards?
It is for, in an affluent area, they still can hire and should hire, pursuant to this loan agreement, 51% of their employees.
Maybe I should be asking the councilman of the district. In and around the Kodak Theater, is it only upper middle class and high-income families and individuals?
In the census tract around the theater and the surrounding areas, in the zip code, not in the hills, but right there in the flats where it is, the average income is about $13,000 per person.
How much? $13,000 a year per person.
Significantly
So-
below poverty line.
This area does in fact, the Kodak Theater happens to be, and this complex happens to be in a community that does have those kinds of needs, right, as you just
That's
outlined? Okay. I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. Now, this $30 million, it's a gift or a loan?
No, it's absolutely loan. It has to be repaid, and we are collateralized. If it's not repaid, we will exercise our remedies.
And what's the round figure value today of the complex that this $30 million is collateralized against?
About $500 million, $600 million.
Okay, so it's conservatively $500 million value of a complex, and you're telling us that so far it appears that they've only collateralized it at about 50%, roughly?
That's correct.
And then a $30 million loan is what they're asking in this Section 108 loan?
That's correct.
Okay. By most well, let's just put it this way. Do we find ourselves being asked to give loans to facilities through your department where they're only collateralized by 50%?
Rarely.
Or do they tend to be collateralized much higher and most likely not likely to be even considered by a private bank? Now, forget about private banks today, they're not giving anybody any money. But I'm talking about in normal circumstances.
U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, their criteria is 80% loan to value.
Okay.
And in this case, we
So this is well within that criteria.
exceeds and much better, correct?
So can you conceive of anybody legitimately saying that there's some underwriting shenanigans going on in this particular loan?
No, not at all. CDD takes full responsibility for.
So the loan to value, for example, which is a big criteria in underwriting, that one is well within any criteria standards, right?
That's correct.
And then when is the guy from the IATSE here? Can you come forward, please? I apologize if I missed this, but about how many jobs does a running weekly 48 weeks a year show in one location? About how many jobs, union jobs, forget about union. How many well-paying jobs?
Well, we just finished negotiations with the Cirque du Soleil for this production, and our estimate was 70 to 90 permanent jobs and more than 100, closer to 200 on part-time every year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just ongoing.
Yes, and that's
So people can count on paying their rent. People can count on paying their rent by working at this facility.
Yes, absolutely.
Not where, like, for example, unfortunately, I don't hope the McCourts don't get upset, but for example, Dodger Stadium, there's a lot of people who get jobs there, but it's seasonal.
Yes.
We're talking about a facility, they're talking about 48 weeks out of the year.
48 weeks out of the year, yes, sir.
Okay, so
And the other weeks, it'll be
70-ish jobs related in and around the union, and then another 100 and some jobs, full-time and or part-time,
As well-
rolling
as well
every
through the
year
union,
out of this
yes.
facility. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And just to add on that, before anybody covers that that there's only that many jobs created as opposed to the other ones, and I respect that's the direct support, the stage jobs that are there. I just want to clarify that the other jobs that I've heard that is part of this calculus is obviously when we have however many visitors, let's say of the 1.2 million viewers a year, I don't know if LA Inc. can help us out a little bit more in terms of the number of people that would come from out of town, but how many jobs are created from 120,000 visitors from out of town? Obviously, what it does in the shopping center.
Mr. President, those are like, basically, and you know this, what he was talking about was direct jobs, and that's great, the number's decent, but when you think about indirect jobs, then that number grows significantly.
And
I mean,
construction.
you talk about construction, you talk about adding people that work at different restaurants, the hotel. I mean, so that's that's economic development at its best. Mr. Cardenas, I'm
Well,
sorry.
my last point is this. It's unfortunate if anybody's trying to make negative hay out of this particular loan, but I think that there's probably a lot of loans that people could probably make some negative hay on, because we're being asked to bail out a building or a facility that's already collateralized very high or what have you. But this is the last one that people ought to be making, trying to make problems about, because this is probably the best loan, Section 108 loan we'll probably have done maybe in a 10-year period, I would predict. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Reyes.
When we talk about repayment, are we talking about the Section 108? Is it based on the receipts of what is going to be generated through the programs of the theater, or is that a detail that has yet to be ironed out? I'm just trying to understand how we're looking at the repayment part.
Yes, there's a very complicated, complex agreement between CIM affiliate and Cirque du Soleil for when live shows are happening there. There's a revenue sharing agreement. Basically, the affiliate of the CIM borrower, they are pledging their share of that net proceeds toward this loan.
Okay.
And debt service coverage ratio there is extremely high.
Right.
On the very conservative scenarios.
I just want to ask a basic question, because a lot has been said, and folks will be asking about, okay, how is it going to get repaid? I mean, they just want to know. I know one of the first Section 108 loans we did back in 94, 95 was to save the Laurie's gardens. And back then, there's a lot of naysayers saying, why do you want to save these gardens? It's an old restaurant. It's deteriorating. What good is it? And luckily, we were able to put together with Section 108 a strategy with the county and the federal government. We saved the Laurie's Gardens. They became the Alley River Center. We still were able to put forth the Home Depot. We saved jobs, created jobs, housed a nonprofit group, created ancillary services such as education, environmentalism, dealing with water issues, and became an anchor. So, and it spurned off many other benefits that's hard to quantify now from an economic, social, and educational point of view. So folks want to be rather myopic about what this does. They have that right, but I think there's a lot of other ancillary impacts that we have to keep our eye on. So, but I wanted to ask that basic question: how is it going to get repaid? And so it's a percentage of shared profits between the owners and the city.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And when they pay, who do they pay the money to when it gets repaid?
Well, repay the loan to the city, and we go back, pay back the money to HUD that we borrow money from them.
So if the project is successful, then the city winds up losing what?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, that was nothing, you said, right?
That's correct. Nothing I said.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, under the underwriting requirements, this is being collateralized based on that complex. That it happens to be a complex, not just one building. They have a responsibility to look first and foremost at the numbers as they're being presented based on how the collateralized project is doing, and whether or not this particular $30 million is going to go toward enhancing the success and the money generated at the project, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So how much of what the borrower has to do with the rest of their projects in and around the country or wherever else they do business, how much of that comes into the underwriting decision versus looking at the project and the project being collateralized?
You mean the benefits to?
No, I'm just talking about whenever there's a borrower, they either have a history or they're more complicated than just owning one project. If they do own other projects around the city, the county, or the country, or what have you, how much of that is supposed to come into play on the underwriting when you have a project that's being collateralized that is around 50% loan to value?
Councilmember, I understand your question. We try to be government to all people. First of all, big company, real estate development company, and a small entrepreneur, we treat them the same.
Okay.
Of course, the risks are different, and our underwriting criteria we look into, because we want to get this money back, and we cannot suffer losses as a result of this. But we treat these loans the same. Small, large, we treat them equal. We're government to all people for all requests of the loans. But in underwriting, if it's a larger developer with history, we are more comfortable with them because they have history of performance. That's natural. And somebody who's new wants to experiment with public funds, we are more cautious, a lot more cautious. But we treat them the same.
Now, my last question, Mr. Chairman. Is in today's world of developments and people who own real estate and large projects like this, do you think there's a developer out there today, if they have 10, 20, 30 projects around the region or the country, do you think there's a developer today that doesn't have at least one of those projects in their portfolio that is not healthy?
Well, this economic contraction has affected everybody.
Exactly.
And
I'll answer the
no
question for you.
discrimination, yes.
I don't think there's a developer, a landowner, I don't care if you're the biggest, most popular, most visible developer in the world or the most quietest developer in the world. If you've got 10, 20, 30 projects in your portfolio, it's impossible. It's probably impossible for anybody to find a developer that doesn't have at least one of those projects that maybe has some trouble or the books aren't balancing well, and at least one of those projects. But our focus right here is supposed to be, and legally, the collateralized project that's before us, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Perry, you good? I'm good. Okay. Mr. Garcetti, I will acknowledge, in the interest of time, that we spotted Mr. Laron Gubler is here, and we also have representatives from CIM that are here today. But I think that the case has been made to move forward with this item, so you can save your breath on this one. So on item 7, without objection, we'll adopt the CAO report. That brings us to item 10.
Item 10 is a motion, Wesson Rosendahl Garcetti, relative to requiring all residential rehabilitation projects that receive $25,000 or more from the city to meet LEED for homes silver or higher standards.
Okay, Mr. Cardenas, you had some questions on this motion.
Yes. Yeah. Did you want to open on this?
No.
This is the LEED certified?
No, this is my motion.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Wait, did you want to lead on this?
No, I just want you to, I had it on consent calendar.
Oh, okay. Never mind. No, just kidding. Well, he was gone when I called it, so I figured I could get away with it, but I didn't realize it was your motion. But so, can any of you elaborate what we're extrapolating today as far as what the cost differential is between a rehab that is not trying to gain some type of LEED certification versus a project where they're trying to gain LEED certification?
Good morning, Yolanda Chavez with the Housing Department. We've done some calculations, and I'm here with Doug Swager, who's the Director of Homeownership, and Craig Arsenal, who's our Rehabilitation Construction Specialist, who's been focusing on our green efforts. But what we find in terms of rehabilitation for major projects is that the cost could be as high as 30 to 40% more. To get to a kind of, silver standard, it's very difficult to do with rehab unless it's a gut rehab. And a lot of our rehabs coming through the trust fund because they're preservation projects. They don't tend to be gut rehab. So what we hope to come back to you with is a report back in terms of what it would take to do and under what conditions does it work in terms of the project size and type of rehab would it work. On the single-family side, we can tell you that we're actually incorporating the Enterprise Green Community Standards into our NSP program, so that all the rehab is going to be done by our holding company for the foreclosed properties.
I'm sorry, by who?
It's called Enterprise Green Community Standards, so let me have Doug give you a little overview of what that is.
So with the, good morning, Doug Swager with the Housing Department. With the Neighborhood Stabilization Program that we've initiated, we're working with a new nonprofit, Restore Neighborhoods LA. They're a property holding company. They're going to be purchasing the properties in bulk from the lenders and the loan servicers, rehabilitating them, and then reselling them either to new home buyers or to other mission-driven agencies to own and manage as affordable rental housing. And we are incorporating these Enterprise Green Communities rehab standards for single-family homes into all the rehabs that we do for this program. And in addition to that, we're going to make sure all of these homes are, I guess, air or energy and water efficient, so that, you know, we're going to seal the envelope so that they save energy, you know, with respect to electricity, gas, and so forth. And so we've been working with Enterprise. You know, they've made a large commitment to the city. Part of that commitment was to help us green up all of our rehab standards, and they're going to be helping us train all of our rehabilitation construction folks, as well as contractors that are going to help us with this program.
Now, what you just described to us is the single-family residence buy-up, rehab, put them back out on the market program?
That and small 2 to 4 unit properties. There's a number of them down in South LA that we will also rehab to that standard.
Okay, but in this motion, it basically asks that you report back, should we want to affect this responsibility on, or the feasibility of affecting this on, and requiring it against all residential projects of any size.
Right. So we will come back and report to you with what it would take to do that and our recommendations.
So therefore, we're talking about residential rehab of 10 units, 100 units, 1,000 units, however big the building of the complex is. Okay, what that would be.
Right.
All right. And what sources or what are you going to utilize to gain that information so it can be as accurate and as well as accurate as possible?
Well, we've been working on that for some time. In fact, Craig's role has been to really focus on green. And so our construction estimate folks know exactly what it would cost to do this in terms of, you know, meeting each standard. So we've been working on that for some time. So it's our own data from our current projects that we finance, but we would also look at some of what San Francisco's doing in terms of some of their silver and gold affordable projects that they finance, in terms of what they've done and the cost and what, you know, and what it takes to do.
Are you finding that there's any disparity in the claims or the numbers that are coming out of, like, the building industry and their estimates of what LEED standards cost the builder versus an organization that, say, might be a not-for-profit and green is in their name, et cetera, and they're just so gung-ho about this, they would love to see everything and anything go green building?
Differences in cost? I don't believe so. I mean, we have one project that's going forward in this round that they're going to be recommending for financing, and I believe their goal is to reach gold standard. It will be an affordable housing, permanent supportive housing project.
Sure.
And the cost is about 30 to 40% more than the others.
Okay.
So
well,
I don't believe there's...
I'm glad to hear that you don't find that there's much of a disparity between the claims of the private industry of what it's really costing and the organizations that are promoting green standards and green building and items like this. So that being the case, what I would like you to do is I would like to make sure that when you report back to us that you do include some of the data and the information from the private industry and their claims of what it's costing, be it single units, because you're going to report back on that, I guess, and then also be it rehab buildings, for example, of 100, 200, 300 units or what have you, especially when it comes to historic buildings as well. Because if anything, I would imagine it's hard to go bring green as something that was built in the 1930s. We're talking about primitive building
If it's a gut
practices compared
rehab,
to today?
it's not so difficult. If it's a gut rehab, it's not. But of course, the costs.
I'm glad to hear that. I just want to see where you're getting that from. Thank you.
Ms. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. In the downtown area, in the Skid Row area, I've done a lot of residential rehabilitation of existing buildings into permanent supportive housing, and I can't even imagine a project that would not ask for at least $25,000. So this would literally hit every single project that I've ever done for rehabilitation for residential. And we are often faced with that tension. When we go into an existing building and rehab it for permanent supportive housing, we usually make a bathroom and a kitchen area for each unit, thereby reducing the number of potential units. And I'd be very interested when you come back in this report, because you've heard the debate about that, whether it's better to just build more units and still have communal eating facilities, communal bathroom facilities, as opposed to private bathroom, private kitchen, which I believe is a better way to help people mainstream themselves back into full and complete life. I want to know what this means in terms of, cost benefit for unit production, because it does add an additional layer on that wasn't there before in resuscitating a building that is here. The Ford is another example of that. The Yankee is another example of that. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but you could literally look at the Southern, any of the buildings that have been done by SRO Housing, Skid Row Housing, that were not original construction, but reworking a building. This would apply to that, and I just need to know what the impact is on that specifically.
Exactly, because it's definitely a cost issue. And I think that what we'll come back with is to be able to tell you whether, with rehab in particular, whether that could even reach silver or gold. I mean, that's going to be a little difficult, but we'll come back with that report back. But in terms of doing this, it is about what is the additional cost per unit, and what does that mean in terms of the units we finance.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to thank the three of you. Mr. Weiss, I think you put in a card to speak on this item. Noah Weiss.
Very briefly, I just wanted to make two comments. One on the solar. This AB 811 is something that I would encourage some consideration about. That was a law that was signed by Governor Schwarzenegger last year. It basically facilitates the financing of the installation of solar without any out-of-pocket, because like with schools or like with lights, the city can authorize basically districts that can be formed. Bonds can be sold, the money can be raised, used to install commercial or residential, and people don't have to repay it except through their property taxes 20, 25 years. So that's something, if we're talking about trying to get something going with these projects, looking at AB 811 as a viable. Palm Springs is doing it, Berkeley's doing it, et cetera. So the city of LA should take the lead on that. Secondly, we're talking about these units, city taking back these units. I again want to encourage you, maybe with regard to the units Ms. Perry was talking about, this may not apply, but again, I want to bring up TOPA, Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. The city is taking back these buildings, and again, I think Mr. Reyes has one in his district. Way back to Mr. Hernandez set up way back when. But basically, if we have an opportunity here to get some tenant ownership of these buildings through the mechanism where the city basically is now in control because they are able to use these monies and take them off the lender's hands, why not take advantage of the opportunity? It's really a once-in-a-generation opportunity that we have. We're in a bottom-up era. We can empower the people democratically as well as economically. We can put some money in the people's pockets. There's no reason to say these people can't come together, gentlemen, and basically be in a position where they can make their own deals. Independent housing, they can sell their rights to anybody they want. And the same way that we put money in the pockets of developers when we basically give them land use rights, TOPA, because of their right of first refusal, will put money in the hands of the tenants. It will empower them. And I think in this context, in this environment, with LA's own unique version of it, I think we can basically make some terrific progress. So I just want to kind of put those two concepts before you for further consideration, maybe plant a seed. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, without objection, we will adopt the motion as amended on item 10. Ms. Barclay, that brings us to item 11.
Item 11 is a motion, Weston Weesaw, relative to funding and implementation of the Green Retrofit and Workforce Program, the LA River Revitalization Master Plan, and the LA Clean Tech Corridor Initiative during the next 10 years.
Thank you. So if I can get engineering, general services, and rep from the CRA to come forward. Good morning. Why don't everybody should identify themselves, and then we'll move forward from there.
Good morning. My name is Dan Eason. I'm the Director of Building Maintenance with the General Services Department.
Good morning, I'm Carol Armstrong. I'm Project Manager for the LA River Project Office in the Bureau of Engineering.
Mahmoud Karimzadeh, I'm the city's Principal Architect with Bureau of Engineering.
Lynn Betts, the Community Redevelopment Agency Project Manager for downtown project areas.
Okay, so we've got reps from 3 different entities, and basically you were called here today to get a feel for if 90 days gives you enough time to come back with the various data that we have requested where it relates to these 3 different programs. Don't everybody talk at once. Who wants to start?
Well, I think from General Services perspective on the green building retrofit, I think what we really need to know at this point in time is what information exactly we're being asked for. We haven't had any communication. I understand that there was supposed to be the executive director would be appointed per the ordinance, the development of the council advisory committee. Really, for us, we have the buildings that need to have the work done in them. We need to know, I think, what the scope of work is going to be. I know we've been working with the University of California, Los Angeles, developing a roadmap to take and provide to the executive director once he is in place, he or she, to take at least get an idea how we might proceed with an audit of the buildings, conceptual designs, and then, of course, putting together an idea of how much funding would be required to take and retrofit the existing buildings. So I think we need a little bit more information before we can say whether or not 90 or 120 days would be sufficient.
Fair enough.
Regarding the river, I think we're good to go.
Mr. Reyes, do you hear that? The river is ready to rock.
Well, I can tell you, Chair, this is a pleasant surprise for me. When I saw this motion and there was other activity around it, I literally found out maybe the day before yesterday. Unfortunately, but I think this is a great strategy. I just think that this is one of those one-shot deals, and we should be very well prepared for this. And looking at the revitalization plan, we do have all the pieces in place to move. The question really for me is, what's the scale and proportion? We can be as high as 1.2 billion in monetary support to make the necessary changes that will spin off countless ancillary benefits that goes in many directions. It is interlinked, this notion of green tech, green buildings, the infrastructure, how the hydrology behaves, how we capture stormwater, how we create natural habitats, and how we actually create a whole facelift for the city by introducing these green tech jobs. My question to the staff here is there enough communication between the departments to know what is the scale of need when it comes to retrofitting structures and streets that has a direct link in supporting the River Master Plan? The River Master Plan already has a fairly detailed set of options of directions we can take. My question to you, is there enough conversation amongst the departments? And I think Department of Water and Power should be here as well. I think the federal office that deals with our lobbying in D.C. should be aware of what we're doing, so we can talk about what is the monetary measure we're seeking in this bond program. So I was kind of caught flat-footed, but I'm pleasantly surprised that you're doing this, council member. But the staff has been doing this for 7 years now, and I personally have been involved for almost 15. So Dr. Armstrong is right, we're good to go. The question is, what's the direction and how much?
Well, when we announced that this was the direction that we wanted to go, we had to acknowledge all of the work that you've done over the years, and that you've been the champion. And as you can see at this point, the the people or the individual representing the river revitalization says they're good to go.
No,
And all of that is because of the hard work that you guys have done over the years. So that's an exciting component, because now what we've got to do is wrap the other departments around.
Well, when we talk about preparation and having a destination for these jobs, we're in the halfway point of rezoning and creating new entitlements for these type of jobs. So we have that already set along certain parts of the river. I believe in the eastern side, Boyle Heights and Central City, near District 9, Councilman Perry's district, there are many great opportunities just waiting there to happen. Again, if we're going to have a message to the public to support this bond, I think we need to get down to some specifics so that when they are being encouraged to vote for this bond, that we can deliver. Unfortunately, in Prop O, we use the river master plan and the river as a way to get attention. But when people go to the river, they're going to ask, okay, where did the Prop O fund go?
Gotcha.
And the fact is, we are using it for the river, but you can't see it. It's being done in other ways that it's hard for the public to appreciate. But that's the balancing act we have to proceed with. So I'm really excited about this, and don't get me wrong, Mr. Chair. I am very grateful that we're here. I think the issue here is communication, coordination, to get the kinds of answers I think you're asking for.
Great. Ms. Perry, before I come to you, did you guys want to make your quick statement? Then I want to...
Sure. On implementation of the cost required for the rehabilitation of city-owned building, just concur with General Services that at this point we don't have enough information to for sure say that we can come forward with the cost estimate. We need more information, audit the buildings, city buildings, there are many of them, to evaluate them, create a scope of work, and then estimate the necessary costs.
The CRA has been working closely now with the Mayor's Office, DWP, and the CDD in developing an overall strategy for the Clean Tech Corridor, which embraces the LA River. So we have a draft 5-point plan to move that forward. The coordination with other departments, particularly on the infrastructure elements, are extremely important. And we're also looking at funds being able to be utilized for equipment purchases for new startup businesses in the corridor.
Okay. Ms. Perry, before you speak, what I would suggest, Mr. Reyes, we do is we get a representative from your staff, a representative from mine, and let them kind of quarterback this with the heads of the various departments to ensure that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, to make sure that things are pushed quickly and that we get the data that we need so that we can come up with some accurate assessment. So that's what I would suggest we do. Do I need to do that in a form of a motion?
Before you do your motion, can I just say what I need to say?
Yeah, go, Ms. Perry,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Garcetti and I are the ones who worked on Proposition O, and we worked very closely on that with the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office in the drafting and the outreach and the setting up of a campaign that was grassroots in its essence to be able to get Prop O passed. And for those of you who may remember the night of that election, that was probably, I think that was the only thing that passed at 67%. Following on the heels of that, then we go through a process that was done very, very differently. The Solar Measure B, which fell on its face.
Yeah, very different.
Very much. You know, I've been on the Ad Hoc River Committee with Mr. Reyes. It runs through my district. I don't really get what's going on here, but from what I can see, reading the report, and I'm not, he's a nice person. I'm not as nice as he is, but I see a big fat mess. And I mean, if I based what I'm reading on what I would do today, I would probably work really hard not to put this on the ballot, because it looks to me right now that this is another Solar Measure B, and I don't want to vote for something that's going to fail. So unless we can have a lot of discussion on, you know, I'm not trying to be an egomaniac about this. Sometimes, you know, it's okay to let somebody go out there and maybe they'll win, maybe they'll lose, you know. I don't know. But I don't want to necessarily put my imprint on it until I'm comfortable that we've done the due diligence on this. And at this point, I'm pretty uncomfortable. If you want to try and go through energy and environment so we can talk about it to help make this a better thing, or if somebody, has something at stake that they just got to do it on their own, then, God bless them, good luck. And then, it's easy enough for me to vote no, too. Up to you guys. I'll certainly have my staff approach the CLA's office to talk about it further. But today, I would vote no on adopting the motion, and I'm sure I'll be the only no, and that's okay. But I just want to make it clear how strongly I feel, because, we're still in the wake or the backdraft of the failure of the solar initiative, and we'll be going out over the next months to talk to the community, to reach out to communities across the city, to get their input. So maybe if we do it again, maybe, just maybe, we could get it to pass. And I don't want to keep going through that exercise. I thought we did a really good job and had an excellent model for Proposition O. And so I'm kind of stunned when people don't necessarily follow that model. Nobody was the winner. I mean, nobody was the hero there, We just wanted it to pass, and it did. So, anyway, that's my thought on it. So,
Well, let me
up to
just
you
say,
guys. Let me know.
Mr. Chair, why don't we hold this on in committee so we can talk about it more before we vote? Because I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm literally learning about the details last night at a river workshop. A constituent brought it to my attention. I asked my staff, and they said, yeah, we did get some communication from the office. They want to know how much they were looking for. And I was kind of flabbergasted because I couldn't give a response. And so if we can hold this in committees, we can talk about it and see, okay, what is it that we're asking for? Because the message in this committee should be a strong one.
I understand. But see, what my only thoughts were related to that is that I don't even think it's realistic for us to believe we can put anything on the ballot this year, next year, or what have you. It was my intention to begin a serious discussion about how this could, in fact, work. What kind of numbers are we really talking about? So it is, again, I would reiterate that it is not my intention, but I would like for them to be able to come back to us with some real numbers and some real things like this. This may be something that we may be massaging for 2.5 years. So it's not my intention. We're going to do it and put it on November's ballot. And if I need to add some language,
I have a recommendation on that.
That would elevate comfort levels, then I would gladly do that. But I think the worst thing that we could do is maybe not have this discussion, because I truly believe, and I could be wrong, that there's going to be things that we might, additional things that we could qualify for coming from the federal government. And I just think the further we move these discussions along, I just think it puts us ahead of the game.
On that note, Mr. Chairman, I have I'd like to move that we instruct these various entities as outlined in the motion, and that we not move on the instructing of the city attorney to prepare the language to put it on the January 5th, to put it on any future state or municipal ballot by January 15, 2010. If we do that, then that
No, we
actually
eliminated it.
puts us right where Mr. Reyes was talking about, and it'll give Ms. Perry an opportunity for us to figure out the numbers, the estimates, and then we can go out and try to figure out what we do next as far as, without talking about putting it on a ballot on a certain date certain.
Well, I was going to recommend that that the date be removed, because I was never personally really comfortable with that. Does that elevate your comfort level so that we can at least
report back on
move
what they
forward,
think
get the discussion, get the information?
I think we need to do a lot of analytical modeling here, and see, that's what we did before when it actually worked.
Yeah, and I think that we should...
didn't do it in Solar Measure B.
No.
But,
I think we should try to follow the lead from Measure O, and hopefully at the appropriate time we may be as successful. So with that said, we will we will adopt the motion as amended, and we will also create like a working group between Mr. Reyes' staff, mine, and you, and then we'll come up with an appropriate time for you to report back to this committee.
Is the amendment clear?
Just removing the language of the instruction to the city attorney.
Just that one date of January 10th?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I am the Chair of Energy and Environment, and,
So,
I think it's a good idea, I could actually be helpful.
Well, no, without a doubt.
And the river part, oh, yeah.
The river part of the environment.
But-
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Maybe there's a way also, Ms. Perry, that when this comes back, we could do a joint.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, we'll do a joint committee here. Okay, thank you. Last item is Noel Weiss for public comment.
Get a one-on-one with them? Awesome. Okay.
Hey, Sergeant, I have a sergeant. Shh. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Herb. Two quick things, Herb. One on the inclusionary zone, as you like to call the whatever it is you call it, the mixed income. Anyway, the Palmer decision, I think basically gives rise to a little bit new of an opportunity now. Again, I want to encourage TOPA as a unifying factor. Andrew and I have talked about it. I think we'll continue to basically talk about it. But we have, just today, what you had on calendar, the financing of the Kodak Theater or this LEED stuff. We can do Section 108 loans for housing. And IDA, by the way, is the only one of the profit-making enterprise entities in the city, because they make money when they do these loans, because they charge a fee that basically goes back into their operations. It's self-sustaining. We don't, right now, we may need some legislation to do that, because housing doesn't do those kinds of things for, it's internally. I think but in any event, one of the exceptions in that Palmer ruling was financing mechanism. The other one, where if the city provides some financing, we can effectuate it through that mechanism. Secondly, what we're talking about is SB 1818. That's the other exception. The problem is SB 1818 is very divisive. Plus, we're going to have to revisit it because of the decision. And again, I'm pushing to get the information out of planning that the city attorney's office, we're still in litigation. Well, we're not still in litigation. Litigation's over. You guys need it in order to basically do this. We can do it right the second time around. We can have a TOPA opt-out, and it will, I'm telling you, Herb, it's going to unite the city. It will, because you're basically empowering the people, and we're now in a bottom-up era. We're not in a top-down. I really want to be able to push that situation. Secondly, with 30 seconds left, we have at 15128, the buildings that arise out of the ashes of Ellis buildings that are apartments, that are rented, are subject to rent control, subject to a little bit of the Garcetti-Gruel tweaking. That's 20%. But what has happened, and I've gotten a couple projects where basically if they built condos, they couldn't sell them as condos or rent them out as apartments, they're subject to rent control. And that's important, Herb, because we're talking about not just the rent control provisions, but we're talking about the just cause provisions. The housing needs to basically be asked to get into this, to do an inventory and find out where these buildings that weren't sold as condos, what's the deal? They need to basically register them, because those buildings were Ellis, they were taken down, and...
Thank you, Mr. White.
All right, thank you, Herb.
Okay, Madam Secretary, Madam Clerk, Madam, my friend, do we have any more business before this committee?
No, sir.
Then this committee is adjourned.